Mondays have long been difficult for me, and today has proven exceptionally hard. This morning my wife Peggy seemed very downcast and sad. She absent-mindedly made breakfast for me and our boys, yet her heart wasn't in it. She wasn't rude, merely noticeably disheartened, which didn't help improve the atmosphere. I was confused about what could be bothering her. Truly, I didn't feel inclined to probe further. My sons, Robert, 16, and Dave, 18, headed to school just as I left for work. I have worked at a shipping company for 15 years, loading and unloading freight from ships. The job is demanding, but it pays well. I have always harbored a deep desire to sail the seas and discover distant places. This dream excites a profound enthusiasm in me, though the thought that it might remain unfulfilled occasionally depresses me. However, my family comes first, and I take great joy and solace in my domestic life, fortunate to have 2 fantastic sons and a devoted wife. Yet the gloom that accompanies Monday, marking the start of a new week, cannot be overlooked. The most challenging aspect of my job is dealing with certain co-workers, specifically Colin Frell and his pals Bob Timbers, Ray Collins, and Freddie Springer. I've disliked their antics since high school, and they haven't changed. Colin started trouble today by bringing up a party last Saturday that I missed because I was helping my father relocate from his house in Chester following my mother's death 6 months ago. I had encouraged Peggy to go to the party in my stead, but upon her return she simply said it was all right. I shot Colin a stern look and kept quiet. "Sorry you couldn't make it, Grady, but thanks for sending your wife. She sure livened up the event," he remarked with a sneer, prompting laughter from his cronies. As I began to walk away, Colin followed, further mocking me. "Grady, your wife has turned into quite the stunner since high school. You're fortunate she's there every night," he scoffed. I sensed it was going to be a tough day. My forehead veins bulged and my neck muscles tightened. Controlling my temper and avoiding conflicts have always been a struggle for me. I attempted to walk away again, but Colin continued. He tossed something at me, a pair of red soft panties. "Peggy forgot these on Saturday. She might want them back for that red dress she had on," he chuckled, his group sniggering along. I stood still, refusing to pick up the red silk panties lying on the floor. I held my breath for a moment, my stomach muscles clenched. I was a coiled spring of anger, poised to snap. I could take on any of them one-on-one, but the whole group was intimidating. But in that moment I didn't care. I began to approach them, prepared to face the crowd, when a large hand on my shoulder halted me. Josh Hamilton, the foreman, caught my gaze and silently signaled toward the main office. I gave the group a piercing stare, a deep resentment brewing within me, and followed Josh upstairs. Instantly, their laughter ceased, replaced by anxious faces. Inside Henry Clark's office, I sat across from his secretary, Sally. "No thanks, I'm too upset to drink anything at the moment," I declined, watching Josh and Henry in a grave conversation through the glass partition. "Sally, were you at the party on Saturday?" I inquired. She simply nodded. "Can you tell me what happened? I'm completely out of the loop, and Peggy hasn't mentioned anything," I pressed on. Sally hesitated, evidently reluctant. "Grady, I really shouldn't interfere. This is something you need to discuss with your wife," she deflected. "But Sally, you were there, you witnessed everything. Can't you give me even a small clue?" I pleaded, desperation in my voice. Sally fidgeted with some documents on her desk, visibly uncomfortable with the exchange. "Please, Sally, I need to know," I persisted. Sally relaxed once Peggy showed up at the event, looking stunningly beautiful. However, after about an hour, Colin began offering her drinks. She started to loosen up and seemed to be enjoying herself. Each time Colin brought more drinks, he would crack a joke with his friends, and they would burst out laughing. Sally paused briefly before continuing. Eventually, Peggy and Colin slipped away to the back storeroom. About 30 minutes later, Bob, Ray, and Freddie joined them. They were absent for an hour and then all returned, joking and laughing. Peggy looked happy but was visibly disheveled. Her hair was messy and her dress was wrinkled. About 10 minutes later, Peggy and Colin departed together. "Thanks, Sally, I didn't want to know that, but now it all makes sense," I commented. We remained silent for another 10 minutes. Josh appeared and gestured for me to enter. "Grady, I'm unhappy with the events of this morning," he stated. "Colin, Ray, Bob, and Freddie each got a week's suspension without salary. You're getting 2 weeks off. I've been informed about what happened last Saturday, and I assume this is new to you. I cannot allow any risk of injury. You're not at fault here, but I expect you to sort things out before you come back. I'll support you however I can during this. Now please leave," he finished. I gave a nod of gratitude to Henry and Sally as I left the office. Colin and his group were absent as I made my way to the parking lot. I left the items at the dock and chose not to return home. Rather, I headed north in search of solitude. This allowed me considerable time to reflect on both the past and the present. Peggy and I were high school classmates. She was large, overweight, and untidy, not conventionally appealing. She didn't care much for personal grooming and was oblivious about how to use makeup. Her hair was consistently messy, and she avoided the more popular groups, which made her quite the social outsider. Strangely, that was what drew me to her. I was a big man myself, standing 6 tall and weighing close to 300 lbs. I was also clumsy, introverted, and not particularly good-looking. I didn't excel at sports due to my clumsiness. Colin Farrell was his complete opposite, attractive, suave, and sporty. It was rumored that many girls wanted Colin to be their first, even though he didn't have a serious girlfriend. He always had a date. I disliked him intensely. He would brag about his exploits, and the girls seemed to be enchanted. Then there was Peggy. She longed for Colin to invite her out, wishing he would be her first. But Colin not only turned her down, but also humiliated her publicly by sharing this and calling her derogatory names, which the school found amusing, leaving Peggy devastated. I saw an opportunity to step in, being new to dating myself. I opted to simply befriend Peggy. Soon we grew close, and by the end of high school we were a couple. After graduation, I landed a job in construction. Within a year, I shed the extra weight and got into shape. It was nice to no longer be the target of ridicule. Peggy and I married within a year, and our sons, Robert and Dave, soon arrived. Peggy started working out at the gym. Her transformation was astonishing. She mastered hair styling, flawless makeup application, and classy dressing. She was gorgeous, and I was proud to have her as my wife. I loved her before her transformation, and now she was like a princess. Once I took the job at the loading dock, our lives improved further. As I traveled along the A1 highway, my destination was clear. It was only a matter of time. Thoughts of our 2 sons, who inherited our robustness, occupied my mind. We made sure they were active to avoid the sedentary lifestyle we once had. Dave was a bit taller and leaner, while Robert had large hands and muscular arms. Both were fit and well prepared to look after themselves. We taught them the importance of self-restraint and the consequences of bullying. Both boys shared a dream: to sail the seas, which seemed to run in our family. I vowed to back their choices in life. Peggy was an exceptional mother and wife. She ran our home efficiently and avoided unnecessary expenditures. Our intimate life was satisfying, or so I thought. We enjoyed our moments together, and I was content with that aspect of our life. I continued on the M6, covering the distance. Shadows grew longer, and I aimed to reach my destination before nightfall. It was a 7-hour drive to Port Patrick, but at that moment it was the only place I wanted to be. I watched for the A75 and finally spotted it as the sun dipped below the horizon. Plenty of parking was available near the Duke's Inn at this time of year. I gave my keys to the bartender and requested a room for the week. I had no luggage, no change of clothes or razor, but it didn't concern me. He took a room key off the rack, handed it to me, and placed my car keys in the same spot. I ordered a pint and settled in a secluded corner. The amber glow from the street lamp filtered through the stained glass window next to me. It was time to numb the pain and escape from reality. Often, I would wake up in my room late in the morning, barely recalling how I got there. Typically, a local would assist me up the stairs and place me on the bed, though I seldom made use of the sheets. Dousing my face with water and taking sporadic showers did little to alleviate my discomfort, especially since I had to wear the same clothes again. The sight of my rapidly expanding beard, which felt alien to me, heightened my discomfort. From time to time, they would process my credit card to settle my account as I wallowed in self-loathing, growing increasingly weary of my situation. Lost in contemplation, I was gazing at the dartboard once more when 2 police officers walked into the room. I acknowledged their presence without really noticing them. They conversed. with the bartender for some time, and he gestured towards me. He also pointed out where my keys were hanging on the wall behind him. I deduced that they were searching for me and was struck by my own sharp inference. They chose not to engage me in conversation, but simply kept topping up my coffee over the next few hours. "Grady Baxter, can we have a word with you? Have I committed any offense?" I asked. "We need to have a discussion. Are you prepared for it? Shall we go outside?" The sun was out, yet everything remained damp. The pub's floor and the cobblestones outside were slick, so I carefully made my way to the seawall. The brisk air felt refreshing as I inhaled deeply. I wasn't a smoker, but the air indoors had been so stifling that it felt as though I was. I bent over the granite seawall and vomited. It was mainly liquid since I hadn't eaten much solid food lately. My head and vision began to clear. My two companions patiently waited as I collected myself. I started to feel remorseful for causing them inconvenience. The bench I sat on was damp, yet it didn't bother me. "So what can I do for you gentlemen?" I inquired. "Firstly, we've been searching for you since you've been missing for 10 days. Secondly, we're also trying to locate Colin Farrell, and we were hoping you might assist us," they clarified. "Well, you've found me, so that matter is resolved. As for Colin Farrell, I haven't seen him since my arrival. The bartender probably informed you that I haven't moved since I checked in. I don't know Colin's whereabouts, but I might search for him once I get back home." I conversed with them for another hour. They had no grounds to charge me, and once they verified my safety, their focus seemed to shift more towards discussing Colin. They had located me via the credit card transactions. "I'll make sure to avoid that error again should it recur," I thought. I went downhill and purchased some new clothes and a toothbrush. I decided to keep the beard for a while longer, despite its unsightly appearance. After a final shower, I settled my bill and left for home. I stopped about 4 times along the way, grabbing a bite to eat on 2 occasions, but mostly I was simply delaying my return. Nothing delightful or appealing awaited me there, yet I was eager to see my boys. She was seated on the sofa, with only one light on in the living room. She watched me, her hands resting in her lap, hesitant to move. It appeared she had been crying, although it was difficult to discern in the dim light. I wanted a beer, but the mere thought made me slightly nauseous, so I opted for a soda instead. I took a seat in the recliner opposite her, waiting for her to start speaking. "The bullies are staying overnight at their friend's house," I suggested, "so we could have some time to ourselves to talk." "Why didn't you tell me before I discovered it?" "I'm not sure. I think I was frightened. Frightened of what I was uncertain about, how you would react or what you might do. I did something unwise, and it didn't end well. It didn't end well." "What do you mean? You won't get angry, will you, Grady?" "I can't say for certain. It might be best if you just tell the truth, but let's see." "Brady, do you recall what Colin did to me back in high school?" "Yes, I've been wanting to retaliate since it occurred. At the party on Saturday night, I saw the perfect opportunity, so I planned a trap for him." "That's not what I've heard." "Listen, Grady. As I mentioned, things didn't unfold as expected. I was well dressed, and Colin began flirting with me. I played along, letting him believe he had a chance, and he suggested we head to the storeroom. We shared a few kisses because I needed to continue the act to trap him. Eventually, he was caressing my chest over my bra, so I removed my underwear and flirted with them to ensure he was turned on." "Why would you do that? What was going through your mind?" "I needed to make him suffer for humiliating me. I noticed he was aroused, so I suggested he remove his trousers for some fun. He complied, and then I did something that girls are typically advised against." "Okay, what exactly did you do?" I pointed at his erect penis and started laughing loudly. I ridiculed it as an inadequate representation of manhood and declared that I would never let anyone with such a small penis come near me. As I taunted him about his size, it began to deflate until it was completely flaccid. It was cruel, but it seemed justified at the moment. "Continue," I gathered myself and made my way to the door. Bob, Ray, and Freddie were outside waiting. It turns out Colin had informed them that they could have their turn with me after him, and they awaited patiently. I bypassed them and headed to the bathroom, chuckling. When I returned to the celebration, they were all displaying confident smirks. It appears they had spread a rumor throughout the party that they had been with me in the storeroom as retribution for my demeaning Colin. I was distressed and left the party. "I was told you left with Colin. That's incorrect. I departed by myself and drove directly home." You left your underwear there for Colin. No, I simply forgot them in my haste to leave. Why didn't you inform me? I asked, visibly annoyed. After their distortions, fear took over. I was unsure how to clarify it to you, I admitted, feeling a twinge of remorse. So you left me to discover it alone in front of all my colleagues. I felt humiliated, as though I was being betrayed. I voiced, still troubled by the memory. They mocked me about the incident, and I was unable to retaliate because I was uninformed of the truth. I had to hear it from a secretary, and her account doesn't align with yours exactly. She wasn't present. I was. What I told you is the truth. Darn it, Grady. And your wife. You were meant to support and defend me, Peggy declared, her voice filled with emotion as she withdrew to the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. I sat still, my soda unattended, watching her as she leaned against the formica table, her cries resonating softly in the room. Despite the discord, my affection for her was steadfast. She was the only woman I truly loved, and despite her allegations and tears, I believed Peggy had intentions to mend our relationship. Sally had no motive to deceive me. I felt compelled to scrutinize the whole concept of marriage. Sally had no reason to lie. I felt the urge to confront Peggy about every discrepancy in her narrative, but I refrained. I couldn't alter the past, and pressuring Peggy to admit something she was unwilling to wouldn't be beneficial. I wanted to know the truth, but I knew I wouldn't obtain it from her. I decided to let the situation be and allowed her time to calm down. I took another shower and joined my wife in bed. She rested her head on my shoulder, whispered her affection for me, and we both drifted into a profound slumber. I still had a few days off before I needed to go back to work. The boys were happy to see me but kept a bit of distance. I suggested a trip to London, which they eagerly agreed to. Peggy was delighted to see the bonds forming among the men in her family. During our London visit, I learned that both boys had been suspended for fighting, an act our family explicitly disapproved of. They reluctantly admitted that they had been teased for their mother's actions at the celebration and chose to deal with it head-on. Some loud-mouthed lads ended up with battered faces and black eyes. They concealed the suspension from their mother but questioned me about the party. Incidents. I postponed the conversation. We stopped by the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, where I requested 3 applications. The boys showed enthusiasm. It required 1 hour to complete all forms. I had all necessary documents like birth certificates and passports. Following brief interviews, we received medical forms that needed a doctor's completion. We ate at Wagamama and afterward went back home, resolving to keep this secret from their mother and friends. The medical assessments took place the next day, and then all we could do was wait. Peggy has always been my sole love. She is the only woman I have ever loved, kissed, or been intimate with. It was challenging for me to accept her potentially dishonorable actions. I found her conduct shocking and indefensible. However, I was still willing to offer her a second chance if she could confirm her account, though the chances looked slim. By the end of the week, she had intensified the situation. Peggy was extremely cautious, making sure not to mention the party or my trip to Port Patrick. She was sincerely attempting to repair our relationship. The following morning at breakfast, she revealed something unexpected. Grady, I've been thinking I want to have another baby now. To give some context, Peggy had been on birth control pills for many years following our son's birth. About 3 years prior, she stopped taking them due to side effects. We had not been using any other forms of birth control. A short while later, I saw a doctor for a shoulder issue, and during the appointment, I discussed having a vasectomy, which was performed in just 20 minutes, leaving me sterile. I chose not to tell Peggy since it seemed unnecessary. Over the past 3 years, Peggy and I had continued to be intimate without contraception, and she never wondered why she wasn't getting pregnant. All of a sudden, she expressed a desire for another child, as though by some miracle either she was incredibly naive or assumed I was. Her suggestion surprised me, yet I acted agreeable. Although I am no expert on pregnancy, nearly 3 weeks had passed since the party, and Peggy might have missed her cycle, possibly trying to conceal it. This made me rethink my plans. The boys were at school, and I spoke with them before they departed. They seemed to understand their mother's situation better than I did. Their support gave me confidence, even though I was unsure about what lay ahead. I spent the majority of the day looking for Colin Frell, who had to be somewhere. At lunchtime, I chatted with Sally at the docks, yet she had no updates on Colin. Rumors were that he was avoiding me, fearing my backlash. Although I am typically non-confrontational, I stayed away from their usual areas to avoid running into my three foes. I met with a local attorney to initiate divorce proceedings with Peggy. I had no intention of hurting her, but I could no longer live with her. With the boys almost grown, I saw little reason to stay. One thing I couldn't let go of was the urge to confront Colin and his accomplices for ruining my marriage. While Peggy was mainly at fault, I couldn't direct my frustration towards her. Her paramours needed to face the consequences of their involvement. Freddie Springer, one of them, regularly visited MC Murray's for a drink before heading home. As evening approached, he exited through the bar's side door to his car parked in the back. Taking advantage of the surprise, I grabbed his arm and twisted it behind him, pinning him against the wall. The terrible din of bones smashing against brick filled the air as I tenaciously maintained my hold, vigorously targeting his kidneys with my free hand, despite his futile attempts. I clutched him firmly, delivering blow after blow until the dreadful snap of his shoulder dislocating echoed through the alley. As he lay on the cobblestones, I departed calmly while a group passed by the alley, oblivious to the scene. Without concern, I proceeded to my vehicle and drove off, undisturbed by any chase. 2 hours later, I was at the police station where Peggy had used our home as security for my bail. While meticulously completing the necessary paperwork, Alice Springer burst in, loudly demanding my permanent incarceration. They managed to restrain her, but she kept yelling until Peggy engaged her in conversation. Whatever Peggy said, it caused Alice to give us both a harsh stare before she left abruptly. Robert and Dave were in possession of my car and drove me back, with Peggy following. The guys appeared impressed, though I was cautious about encouraging their behavior. Freddie suffered a dislocated shoulder, a broken nose, 2 black eyes, and numerous internal injuries that were still under assessment. He had several broken ribs, but luckily none had penetrated his lungs. Upon returning home, my wife and I chose not to speak of the event. That night, I slept on the couch for the first time in 2 decades, which didn't trouble me. The following morning, I awoke early, contemplating my next actions. The Osaka Maru was arriving at Felixdale. Captain Jose Costa had consented to have me aboard, provided I organized my documents. I committed to reaching out to him later that week. On my return, I stopped for fuel, and just as I finished, I noticed someone charging at me. I turned just in time to see Ray Collins hit me on the left side with a 2x4. It grazed my left arm before fracturing a few ribs. Struggling for air and unable to inhale properly, I closed my eyes and saw intense white flashes. Then my knees gave way. The wooden stick produced an unusual thud as it fell. Ray lost his hold on it after the hit. As I collapsed, my right hand instinctively grabbed some flannel. Turning to the left, I slammed my right fist, encased in flannel, onto the ground, landing forcefully on Ray's frame. With my eyes still shut to block the pain on my left arm felt numb. My right hand started pounding up and down, indifferent to what it struck as long as it wasn't the concrete. While my left side coiled protectively, my right side kept attacking whatever was within reach. Initially, Ray wriggled beneath me trying to break free, but soon he became still. I didn't stop hitting him until bystanders intervened. Breathing remained laborious and the pain intense. A medic administered an injection, and I drifted off en route to the hospital. Awakening a few hours later, my left arm was bandaged, and my body was tightly wrapped. Breathing was simpler but still needed careful management. Peggy was there, visibly upset. "What were you thinking, Grady?" she scolded. "You really made a spectacle over that trivial party disagreement." "Sorry, darling," I responded. "I didn't initiate anything." "Why did your friend attack me with a 2x4? And what's this minor party disagreement about? I need a full explanation of what occurred," I demanded. "Otherwise, I'll keep pressing." "You weren't just pressing," Peggy argued. "You were pursuing and attacking them." I gave her a wry smile. "Why would I want to do that?" "Quit playing the bully and don't refer to them as your friends." Peggy exited as the doctor entered. I was bruised more than seriously injured. Ray's swings resembled those of a child at play. My arm ached and my cracked ribs were manageable. The pain and breathing difficulty stemmed merely from the impact. The following day, Robert and Dave fetched me, both grinning, but I advised them to moderate their enthusiasm. Ray, however, was severely affected. His diet would be liquid for a month due to his jaw being wired shut, and it would take a week for his swollen visage to lessen. Although each punch was haphazard since I was not aiming, one managed to break his collarbone. No legal actions were taken against me as the incident was verified by witnesses during our disagreement. At first, I had to extend my leave this period due to sickness. Sally informed me that Bob Timbers had resigned and his wages had been redirected to his siblings in Aberdeen. Colin remained missing. My communication with Peggy had decreased, resulting in nights spent on the couch. Although I removed the arm slings shortly thereafter, I still experienced mild pain in my ribs, but I could manage movement and breathing. With the departure of the Osaka Maru in 4 days, I consulted with my lawyer to finalize the divorce documents to be delivered within that time frame. Handing over everything to Peggy, including our house, was of no concern to me as I anticipated the bail bond agency would confiscate it after I skipped bail. I included my vasectomy records and a recent laboratory analysis on material count in the divorce paperwork, reached out to friends in Scotland, and resumed fitness training to recover from the 2x4 attack. Henry Clark, reluctant about my departure, pledged to keep it a secret and offered to care for my sons if necessary. Meanwhile, Peggy ceased her gym visits and our home environment deteriorated, evidenced by piles of laundry and overall disorder. Quick, uninspired meals and mundane conversations became routine. Peggy appeared to be putting on weight again, marking the beginning of a rapid decline that took place over a mere 4 weeks. The following day, my sons handed me my maritime papers, visibly thrilled. Although we were all ready to leave, I instructed them to finish the school year before making any moves, though I doubted they paid attention. I prepared all necessary items for my stay on the Osaka Maru and received a checklist from the quartermaster for the imminent departure. Robert had left his motorcycle by the dock's end. The ride to Aberdeen lasted 8 uncomfortable hours. The motorcycle vibrated so intensely that reading the odometer was impossible, despite the smooth-running engine and good weather. Upon arrival, my relief was palpable. My associates located Bob Timbers and scheduled a meeting at the Four Crowns. The men's restroom was positioned at the back with exterior access. I briefly looked inside to signal my presence to my friends, then stood outside. The first 2 individuals were locals, followed by Bob. I heard the door lock as he approached the restroom. I seized his right arm, mirroring my previous encounter with Freddie, and forced his head against the alley's stone wall. His face grazed the stone as he stumbled forward. After walking about 50 feet, I propped him against the wall. He was moaning and weeping from the pain under the dim streetlight. I could see his right eye socket filled with blood, his cheekbone exposed below, and his face severely abraded. "Please don't kill me, Grady. I'm sorry, he begged. I had no plans to end his life, but I opted not to disclose this. Here's the arrangement, Bob. Tell me the truth about the party incident, and you'll live. Lie to me and it's over." Okay, I'm in pain, Grady, he sobbed. "Speak and I'll ensure you see a doctor," I assured him. "When Peggy arrived at the party without you, Colin became animated. He boasted about his plans to intoxicate her and exploit the situation. Peggy looked stunning, Grady, truly. She was well-dressed and seemed up for a fun evening." Colin continued to serve her drinks, jesting that we'd get sloppy seconds. We doubted his chances, but after some time he took her to the storeroom and we followed. "Are you sure you want to know this, Grady?" "Yes, continue," I demanded. "All right, but please no more harm," Bob implored. We listened as Colin and Peggy were behind the door, engaged in intimate activities. She was vocal, uttering provocative phrases similar to those in adult movies. We were all stirred just by hearing. Eventually, Colin opened the door. Peggy was positioned on the couch with one knee raised, her private parts exposed, her top pulled down, her breasts visible, and she was smiling broadly. Each of us had a turn with her, and she also engaged in oral sex. We didn't harm her. Grady, we didn't make her do anything against her will. Colin and Freddie were intimate with her, while Ryan and I chose not to participate. Once done, we assisted her in getting dressed. She left with Colin, and it's possible they went somewhere before he dropped her off, though I'm not sure. I'm truly sorry, Grady, we didn't hurt her. I promise. and we never pressured her into anything," he implored. I merely looked at him. "Do you know where Colin is?" He shook his head. No, this man couldn't risk lying to me. His story aligned more closely with Sally's than Peggy's. In the dim lighting, his face looked dreadful. He was bleeding more, and his eye socket was darkening. Shreds of skin dangled from his cheek, and the skin underneath was vivid red. I knocked on the pub's closed door, bid farewell to some old acquaintances, and mounted the bike. A short while later, I noticed an ambulance speeding towards the pub. Early in the morning, I returned the motorcycle to its original spot and boarded the Osaka Maru. Robert was to collect the bike later. My shift started that night, so I spent the day recuperating from the ride. That motorcycle really wore me out. I should have driven the car. Hours later, I awoke, took a shower, and had some dinner. My supervisor outlined my responsibilities and left me to it. The job was basic, not too demanding. My colleagues were not particularly helpful or engaging. They answered direct queries but didn't provide guidance or seek camaraderie. I hoped to connect with the crew, but it seemed improbable. Everyone else seemed amiable among themselves, but I felt like an outsider. I chose to wait patiently. Peggy likely received her divorce documents that morning, and I'm certain Bob Timbers has informed the authorities by now. "Mr. Baxter, the Royal Navy has requested permission to land a helicopter on the Osaka Maru to bring you back to the mainland," he declared solemnly. "I received a detailed message this morning explaining their reasons. Let me outline the main points of the extradition request. If there are any errors, you'll have the chance to correct them. They want to discuss with you the disappearance of someone named Colin. They are implicated in charges connected to Colin's vanishing. They are also accused of brutally attacking a man named Fred Springer, resulting in the loss of one kidney and potentially the other. You are accused of fleeing bail on that charge. You are also accused of assaulting a man named Ray Collins, initially considered self-defense but now seen as more serious. Lastly, on the night you got on the ship, you allegedly severely beat a man named Bob Timbers in Aberdeen, causing him to lose his mode of transportation. I don't know how you could have been in Aberdeen at that time, and I don't want to know. It's noted here that these incidents were executed barehanded as revenge for a personal grievance. Mr. Baxter, any comments, sir? I apologize for any issues I've caused, particularly regarding the charges. I just wish I had found Colin. He'd likely be in the hospital like the others. I have no clue where that guy is. I'll gather my belongings and be ready for the helicopter when it comes." Captain Costa gave me a smile and stated that it wasn't necessary. I told them you never boarded. There's no Grady backer on the Osaka Maru now. Back to work. I went back to the crew quarters, prepared for my shift, and by dinner time the police report had circulated among the crew, and for the rest of the journey I had more friends than I could count. I didn't receive any communication from my family until around a month later, when my attorney contacted me to confirm that my divorce was complete and I was legally single. Peggy was notified of the same development, but she forfeited the house to the bail bond company after my departure from the country. Colin Frell was admitted to the hospital with severe injuries, and the authorities were searching for Robert and Dave in connection with the situation. My sons discovered Colin and Peggy together in our bedroom prior to the seizure of the property. Peggy had since moved to OK to live with her sister, was expecting a baby, and was struggling with her weight once again. I was still facing outstanding charges, and my attorney recommended I stay abroad. He was unaware of my son's current location. The information gave me conflicting emotions. The following day at breakfast, the ship's captain came over to our table and informed us, "I just wanted to inform you that Robert and Dave Baxter are not on board the Tan Nakamura bound for Cape Town." We both grinned. I had always aspired to a seafaring life. Second story. How do I come to terms with being the other woman? Last year I moved in with a family friend my father has known for over a decade and a half. It was my first encounter with her, but she quickly became like a second mother to me. At that time I was grappling with severe depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and feelings of isolation. She, alongside my father and her family, endeavored to help me regain my mental stability so I could feel more connected. One of her children, aged 41, was notably charismatic and attractive. I mentioned to her that I found him good-looking. She chuckled and later shared this with him during a playful moment. He occasionally gave me rides to work and stopped by the house occasionally. At a barbecue, he introduced me and his family to his girlfriend of 3 years. Roughly a week later, he proposed that we go bowling alone. When I inquired about other attendees, he confirmed it would be just the two of us. Unsure of his intentions, I sought his mother's advice, who initially cautioned that his motives might not be honorable and advised against going. However, after I expressed concerns about the age gap and his relationship status, she reconsidered, suggesting that he was likely just trying to uplift me like the rest of the family. Consequently, we went bowling. I dressed down to signal my platonic intentions. After bowling, as we sat down, he asserted that, as an adult, I should make my own decisions, regardless of his mother's views. We went on to play pool at a bar and he invited me to his place afterward. I consented, and after a lengthy conversation he became physically affectionate. Despite my reluctance to escalate things further, he insisted and things progressed physically. The following morning he took me out for breakfast and a manicure, and we became intimate again. While part of me relished the attention, another part was plagued by guilt for betraying his girlfriend. Several days later, he texted me, offering a gift and suggesting a trip to the beach. I replied, informing him that our behavior was not appropriate, to which he responded, encouraging me not to think too much about it, and reassured me that I was grown up and in charge. I'd like to think this exchange will stay positive, as long as neither of us allows it to turn negative. I communicated my readiness to continue with oral sex, but my decision against having intercourse. This displeased him, yet he performed oral sex on me again. Later he committed a deeply unkind act. He made plans for me to visit, had me get ready, and wait until 10 p.m. while he actually spent the entire time out with friends. This was his way of getting back at me because I refused to sleep with him. When I discovered his deceit, I was overwhelmed with emotion and cried. I felt used and rejected, and my thoughts of suicide grew stronger. The reason I went along with this is that, having always felt undesirable, I genuinely thought he was the best I could hope for, and that I should appreciate the moment, even at the cost of harming his girlfriend. I seized the chance to feel desired and yearned to be touched. I'm not trying to present myself as the victim, rather I'm explaining my thoughts during this distressing time. His girlfriend is the one who truly suffered. How do I begin to forgive myself and move forward? I am trapped in a cycle of shame, overwhelmed with guilt, and a reduced sense of self-worth. I resent being made to feel like a backup plan, and I'm struggling to move past this. It has been 6 months, by the way. In the third narrative, he was disloyal, contracted an incurable STD from someone, and then spread that STD to another person with whom he was disloyal. I had been with him for 4 years and found out that he had been unfaithful to me with several women. I also discovered that he now has an incurable STD and was involved with another woman to whom he transmitted the same STD. Luckily, I did not contract anything, but the other woman is still unaware of his unfaithfulness and everything related. As a result, they both now have genital herpes, and it seems they are trying to make it work, since they both have it. Moreover, the woman has diabetes and HPV, as he told me. I feel compelled to inform this woman of this man's actions and how he was unfaithful to me with her, and then essentially cheated on her with me. I am torn about how to proceed. Karma has certainly caught up with him, but I am debating whether I should just move on with my life, or if I should disclose to her that he was unfaithful to me and cheated on me while he was with her. Now that they both have this STD, I worry that telling her might only add to her existing health problems and challenges. I am conflicted about whether to step back and let fate handle it, or to tell her that he was with me for 3 years and cheated on me with multiple women until he met her and infected her. I am filled with anxiety over this and unsure of what action to take. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Cheating Stories. If these stories moved you, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Don't miss the next installment of Emotional Relationship Stories. Your support means a lot, and we are excited to bring you more gripping tales. Until next time, remember that every relationship tells a story. See you soon.